questioning is perhaps the greatest gift we have as human beings.
Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking.
It's a way of thinking that teaches us to question everything we think we know.
Science came about by developing techniques, methodologies for gaining reliable knowledge about the world.
We have at our fingertips the technologies that were only possible for the largest governments and corporations 20 years ago as an individual today.
If human civilization continued at anything remotely like the current pace of technology advancement for 1 million years, where would we be? I think we're either extinct or on a lot of planets.
The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it.
We hold the scientific method in high regard because it works. If it stopped working, we'd throw it out.
Discover the past.
Create the future.
This is the Here and How podcast.
Welcome to the Here and How podcast, where every week we dive deep into big ideas, exploring the past so we can create a brighter future. This is episode 15. Are you being manipulated? My name is Rachel Oates, and with me today are the wonderful Thomas Westbrook.
Hello.
And Stephen Woodford.
Hello.
So, this week we are talking all about sales and marketing and the manipulation or, sales techniques that people use to try and get you to buy their product or use their service or to invest in them. So, to give everyone listening a little bit of background about why I chose to talk about this topic, you two probably already know this, but I don't know if anyone else does, but I used to work in digital marketing, right? And
what?
I know. Can you believe it? Me having like a real person job. I know. It seems weird. I know. Who would hire me, right?
Everybody.
But no, I worked in digital marketing for quite a few years, and I was pretty good at my job. I had a promising career ahead of me before I decided to disappoint my parents and quit to become a YouTuber.
Throwing your life away.
Yeah.
Chasing your dreams.
Who does that these days? Basically, no. So I did digital marketing and I worked in the B2C side of things, which is business to consumer, right? And that means my job was basically to figure out who our customers were, what they wanted, how we could appeal to them. And it was reaching out to people via digital platforms and forging a relationship between the consumer and the brand. So it wasn't just a matter of figuring out the consumer's needs and then figuring out how we could appeal to them, but it was about kind of getting inside the consumer's heads in a slightly manipulative way and making them want the things we were already offering. So to do this
Inception.
Well, kind of, but no.
It was my idea that I wanted a toaster.
Kind of, but no.
But I know you guys have had a little bit of experience with this, and I guess you do it for your channels as well. But I find that to market really well, you need to kind of understand how the human mind works and kind of understand the psychology behind it, right? And you need to know what is happening when people decide to buy a product or pay for a service or whatever. And once you know that, you can kind of use it to your advantage, right?
Exactly. It's incredibly important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So today in this episode, we're going to be looking at consumer psychology, a little bit of buyer behavior, and how marketers and advertisers sometimes take advantage of this. And you, as a normal person, can be manipulated into parting with your money. So, question for you guys to start with. What is the last thing you bought?
Dinner.
I bought a very expensive cake and tea in Gunwolf, Portsmouth.
Thomas?
Besides food?
Just anything.
A dinner.
A dinner?
Yeah.
Did you eat out or eat in?
I ate out. I took Amanda out to a seafood restaurant.
Aww.
We had a date night.
Oh, that's sweet. Has nothing to do with the podcast. I just wanted to be nosy. No, but seriously, that's really interesting though. You're both, the last thing you had was eating out, I guess, and it was food. But why did you decide to go to those places? Why did you decide to buy those things? What was your decision-making process?
Do you want to go first, Thomas?
Well, it was the place that we had our first date.
Was it an anniversary?
We hadn't. Well, it wasn't quite a 1 year, but we hadn't been back there in a while. So.
It's actually really cute.
Yeah, it had been about 10 months or something, and it was funny because they put us in the same booth and we had the same waitress, and it was everything was we ordered some of the same drink specials, and yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna be sick. Well done. That's great stuff.
Oh, that's really cute. Just putting us to shame.
Now we know what Rachel's like with cuteness, so be careful now. Don't throw any more truths.
You also know that like a date night for me and Dan is like having a pint in spoons. So
it's Netflix and chill. Come on.
Yeah, so I'm not sure in the context of our episode what makes things cute. I mean, it wasn't short and pudgy, and you know, the restaurant didn't have like an oversized head or big eyes.
But it was a little bit wobbly on its feet, right?
It was sentimental.
Oh, that is really sweet. So I guess you could say that your decision to go there was more of an emotional decision than a rational decision.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah? Because you went there because, you know, it makes you feel good. You have a good connection with it. Like, you have good memories there. Not because it has the best value food in the area. I'm guessing.
Well, I think the first time that we went there, it was more that, like, it was one of the nicer restaurants with good food. But...
That's fair.
But yeah, it's not like we're doing a cost-benefit analysis with, like, you know, a checklist and saying, you know, proximity to, you know, home and nice views and food on a scale of 1 to 10.
Temperament of
how
the
good
waiters.
does it taste? Cost efficiency.
You give every waiter
Wait
and
time.
waitress like a score out of 10 and a probability of which one you're going to get, and, you know, calculate how good a time you're going to have.
No, we just we went with it where it was a place by the river, and it was, you know, a nice location, not too far, and I think initially, but it was kind of an emotional decision of, oh, that seems like a nice place. Or I think the first time we went there, it was just because she was craving oysters.
Oh,
so I don't know if you call that rational or emotional, like food cravings.
Oh, I'd say that's definitely emotional. Yeah. It's just me. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, so I saw my family today because it was my birthday yesterday. Very old.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
To you.
No, don't do the whole song. Let's not put the viewers through that.
Please do the whole song.
No, don't do it. There was a really expensive cake.
I'll sing it quietly while you talk.
Yeah, if you do it as like a background sound, that would be really distracting and creepy. Okay, guys, bye. No,
continue.
I will. I'll try to. So, very expensive cake. I wouldn't buy the cake normally, but because I was with the family, I wouldn't buy it on the principle that it was really expensive. There's no need for it to be that expensive. There was a co-op around the building essentially, and the co-op is basically, I don't know if you've got them in America, but it's a cheap shop, and I could have got just as decent quality cake. Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to say their tagline. I don't remember it, but the reason I paid for the more. Say again.
Do they have a tagline?
Probably do. I know they've got funeral services as well, but that's not why I bought the cake. I'll be honest.
Okay, I'm sorry, interrupting. Go, tell us about the cake.
I'm going to tell you all about the cake.
Tell me about the cake.
I bought it where I wouldn't normally, but because of certain factors in the environment, in factors that you're probably going to tap into, but it was more of an emotionally charged purchase because I was with family that I hadn't seen for a long time. I wanted to treat them. I wanted to demonstrate that I'm doing okay, etc. So there's like elements that come in and they're involved. They had better seating than where you'd have to go if you bought cheaper food, etc. Which that does have like this analysis, but it is an emotional driven decision, or it wasn't an emotional driven position from why I bought that cake. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the part where you said that they do funeral services at the cake shop.
No, at the co-op.
At the supermarket.
Oh.
Yeah, they got their franchise.
I'm like, how badly do you have to hate grandma to like throw a party when she dies? It's like, we do birthdays and funerals.
Be weird.
Poor grandma.
I don't know how to follow on from that. I had a whole episode planned.
So it was an emotional decision that he bought the cake with.
Yeah.
At the funeral store.
No, that's the thing. He didn't go to the funeral store. He went to the nicer place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue.
Okay. So what I'm
We've broken Rachel.
Okay.
Didn't take long, all of 10 minutes.
I know.
Back to serious stuff. I had some real science to throw in here. Ish. Kind of. A little bit. So I guess the point, like, that you're both sort of getting at is that you made very emotionally fueled decisions that would grant you, like, the most pleasure and the most happiness to you and others around you, right? There wasn't really any, like, logic or rational reason there.
Not a tremendous amount of logic.
No. So this kind of leads us on really, really nicely to kind of one of the sort of big things in marketing, which is understanding the kind of process or the decision-making events that go into, you know, someone deciding to part with their money and buy something, right? And way back in kind of the beginning of the 1900s, late 1800s, so we're going like way back here now, and a long time ago now, there was this idea that was called the hierarchy of effects model. And it was published for the first time in, I think it's like 1893, maybe? I'm not sure. And at its most basic level, it's this model that suggests that every time a customer purchases something, there are 3 steps in that decision: thinking, feeling, and doing. But depending on what they're buying, these steps are in completely different order to other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's been like a hell of a lot of research into this over the years, up until, well, it's still happening today. But in 1980, Richard Vaughn published what is today one of the most like accepted models in this kind of sequence of events, and it's called the Fcb Grid. So it's basically this grid, and it puts forward 4 different buying situations or 4 different sequences of using this think, feel, do steps to show how people make decisions for buying a range of different goods, right? And so he came up with this model by kind of putting things on 2 different axes. And one of them is asking, does this decision involve more rational or emotional thinking? And so it can be at either end. And then the second axis was kind of, are the decisions high involvement? For example, they involve like a lot of research and a lot of thinking about it. Or are they low involvement? They're like an impulse purchase. Like maybe you're in the queue at the supermarket and you pick up a chocolate bar. That's a low involvement purchase decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is this kind of making sense?
Yeah.
So in this grid, you've got basically high involvement rational decisions, high involvement emotional decisions, low involvement rational decisions, and low involvement emotional decisions. Yeah?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So based on these, he could figure out what decision processes would kind of take place in the customer when they're buying certain types of goods. So let's look at an example and say like the decision to buy a chocolate bar, right? Is that high or low involvement?
Low involvement.
Mm-hmm. And is that more rational or emotional?
Emotional.
Exactly. So that goes in like the kind of bottom corner of the grid, the 4th one, the low involvement emotional side, basically. And he suggested that the decision-making process for this was do, feel, think in that order. So you see the product and buy it. That's kind of your initial thing to do. It's like an impulse purchase. You just do it. Then afterwards you feel, because it kind of makes you feel happy. You feel full. You feel satisfied. The chocolate's giving you all the good feelings. And then afterwards you maybe think about it a little bit more, and you maybe think, oh, I want to learn more about this brand. Maybe you start thinking about what the health effects of you just eating that chocolate bar are, and you think about it more afterwards. So the
guilt sets in.
Exactly, yeah. And so by understanding this process that consumers go through, you can then take that do, feel, think kind of process and basically market chocolate bars to people. And so they want to make an impulse purchase for your particular bar. Does this make sense?
Yeah, totally. It made me think, when you've got chocolate bars competing, say like a protein bar, so it's less calories, but they've managed to cram in 10, 12 grams of protein. I guess they're trying to target the people which, although it's, what did we say it was? A low investment purchase, or I can't remember the terminology, but
like low involvement.
There's a low involvement, but they suspect that their target audience, which I think they're probably correct, are still going to be consciously thinking about what they're picking up. So it's not just emotionally based, like, oh, I just want the chocolate with lots of nuts in, say a Snicker. They will actually look and go, well, what can I eat which isn't going to be 300 calories? And they might see the protein bar, it's got a bit of chocolate in, and they've appealed to them by actually tapping into that, knowing that that process would be taking place in their mind. And bam, they've made their impulse buy, and they feel like they've accomplished what they're trying to have, which is food, and food that's quite nutritious.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, when they advertise for stuff like this, you know, you look at the advertisements and it's not like, you know, this chocolate bar does this, and it gives you this and this. Normally it's just a picture of like a video of like melting chocolate that's like just looks delicious, and then there's like a shot of someone like eating it. And it's, you know, that there's no thought process involved. It's just like, ooh, yummy, food, good, me eat.
Yeah.
It's normally celebrity endorsement as well. It's like David Beckham munching on a Snickers. Sales will go through the roof, and they will.
You could be hot like me if you only eat more chocolate.
You see that with like Slimming World and stuff like that. It's like, if you eat this meal, you'll look like this lady. It's like, yeah, no.
It feels good to think it's possible.
It does.
That's true. I remember there was a documentary I watched years and years ago now about how they used to have basically like female models in the adverts for flakes. So you know the flake chocolate bars, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they used to, it was kind of like a thing, you'd be like the flake girl, and it would be a woman in like some really fancy dress or something in some really like beautiful room, and she'd be there and she'd put the flake up to her mouth and she'd take a bite and it would like crumble and everything like that. And it was quite a big thing to be like the flake girl. And then this one time there was one woman who did it, and she put her tongue on the flake just before she took a bite. And because she kind of licked it, it caused so much trouble. And there were so many complaints that it was too sexual and too over the top, and, you know, it wasn't appropriate. And they had to kind of, you know, stop the advert showing because there was all this drama about it. And there was a point to that story, but
in the UK, does flake not mean like ditz? Because if a girl, like in the US, if a girl is like flaky, then it's like, she's kind of like a ditzy idiot.
Yeah, I get the association. It's not in the South. That's not really used. Okay. We do use dit, but
I know, like flaky is a bit like you can't count on them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're
like
always like
unreliable. They're kind of just like all over the place. Like I think of kind of the stereotypical blonde girl that's just like just kind of all over the place.
Yeah. But it's also like a really crumbly chocolate bar that I always think looks a bit like a twig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the flake girl.
Oh right. No, it was a thing probably in the like 80s, 90s sort of thing. And yeah. It was there. It was only like this one specific woman who was like in the adverts at the time, but you know.
But did sales go up after that? Or were there more people boycotting it, or more people buying it just so that they could like joke around about being the flake girl seductively eating a chocolate bar?
Oh no, I think it did actually help sales.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's like any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, like on kind of like the opposite end of this, like going back to the sort of grid thing, if, for example, you were buying, say, car insurance, if we kind of look at the buying process for that, like, is that low involvement or high involvement?
High involvement.
Exactly, yeah, because you want to shop around, do your research, figure out what you're buying, right?
Yeah, there's also, it's not a tangible thing, it's just you have to have insurance. You don't really give a shit. You just want it as the lowest price. And because it's just utility, there is no symbolic value being injected in. It is very much a utility mode of thought in order to make that purchase. So, yeah.
And it's largely like, as long as this company will actually pay me back money and not screw me if I get in an accident, then, you know.
Yeah. So that's more rational than emotional, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what do you think the kind of buying process, is for that, the 3 steps? If you know what I mean. The think, feel, do steps, like what order?
What, for each of those purchases or just for the latter?
It's almost
just
like
to say car insurance.
It's almost like it's think, do, feel. Like you think about it, you buy it, and then afterwards you feel good or bad about the purchase.
I think it would be feel first, just because I tend to have been convinced that feelings do start everything. But that's not to say that you basically feel, I have to do this, I'm getting anxious, I need to act now, I want to be insured. If I crash and I'm not insured, I'm in big trouble. That leads you into the process at the beginning, but then immediately you fall into this, I just want to get this sorted as cheap as possible. I don't care who I'm insured with because there is no value in it for me. And that's when it's just rational till the end. And it's like, oh, I feel good because I took the cheapest considering the circumstances that I'm in.
So the feeling at first is more just one of annoyance.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it taps into what we were saying with like free will and topics where we've tapped into neuroscience. The prefrontal cortex doesn't get information until it's already emotionally processed. And so maybe I'm being pedantic, totally perhaps the case considering the context of this conversation, but the emotion drives you to make the decision. Or to get into the situation where you will make the decision. But then the process itself is different, of course, from buying a chocolate bar in most cases.
Yeah.
Well, I think, yes, for all scenarios, you're gonna make the emotional decision first, and then you're gonna rationalize it afterwards. But sometimes you have the emotional decision, then you kind of think it through, and you change your mind based off of more information that you gather.
Or perhaps it's two emotional decisions. So the first emotional decision is that I do have to sort this out. The second emotional decision is this is the one I'm going to go for. But that isn't how you decide the second one. It would be in the case of a chocolate bar, but not in purchasing.
I think what Rachel might be getting at more is like, where is kind of the bulk of the feeling and the bulk of the thinking? Yeah,
definitely mainly rational, for sure.
Yeah. No, you guys are kind of like spot on here with what I was going to come on to after this, which is that, this isn't a straightforward process. So Vaughn said that with something like car insurance, he put the process as think, feel, do, in terms of first you kind of have to think rationally and do your research and think, this is the best option for my car. This gives me the best value for money. This is the logical option. And then you feel, because you're like, yeah, I have this confidence in this company. I feel good going with this option. Yeah, this is a good feeling. And then you do it because you buy the car insurance. And that was what he said the kind of buying process was. And that's what he said marketers had to kind of tap into, which is why mostly when you look at, say, like car insurance adverts, they go with the, we offer this and we offer this rather than we make you feel good. It's like they give you the facts and then they say, so you can feel safe with us, It's also why so many insurances are started via basically a midway company, which does all the comparing for you, so you don't have to waste your time. You see this in certain industries, and it's because it's normally a purchase where it's not low cost, it is high cost, but it is a necessity, but no one really cares. And so it falls into that category of, listen, you do the algorithm, you find out what's going to be the cheapest, and then the company can pay you a percent, which is basically how it works. And then they're going to get the traffic. Yeah. But like you say, though, there are these other steps in the decision-making process. Like, it's not as straightforward as Vaughn thought it was, but it's still something that marketers and salespeople can utilize, which is kind of the big thing here. So I want to give the example of, like, imagine you're selling a perfume, right? And it's, let's say, a women's perfume. If we were to put it into Vaughn's little grid, where do you think it would fit in terms of high or low involvement purchasing and like emotional or rational?
I'm kind of cheating because I have a degree in advertising and ad marketing. I know I've said that before, but considering how relevant it is to this discussion, it should come in here. I think ultimately the way you market it determines the price you can sell it at. So if you market two products, they could be exactly the same product. A good example, just because it's fresh in my head, is you can have a shirt that's made by people in China, and you can have a shirt that's made by people in China that has a crocodile on it, or has a lion, or just whatever it might be. And if you are able to adhere symbolic value to one of them, the one with an animal or whatever you've got on it, your logo, it doesn't matter, then you can sell it for double, triple, quadruple the price, because people aren't just buying it for its utility. Like when they buy stuff such as insurance, they're also buying it for what it symbolizes, what they can look like. So when it comes to the context of perfume, you can either say, listen, do you want to just smell okay? Here's a cheap range. Or you can sell exactly the same product and sell it with sexual innuendo, with celebrity endorsement, with very creative and colorful packaging. Packaging alone can change.
You slap a celebrity's name on it, and instantly they think, "Oh, that's what David Beckham wears." I want to smell like David Beckham.
Exactly, and it does work. Yeah. So I've seen lots of cases. They're not so much peer reviewed, but they're getting pretty good in advertising with being able to look objectively at what's working and what's not. And it is amazing how many times a celebrity endorsement, for example, will skyrocket something.
All you have to do is change your name so that it's the same as some celebrities and then sell a product.
Next time you do a Holy Kool-Aid advert, who are you going to pretend to be? Whose name will you have? You'll be like, hello, this is Richard Dawkins. People will just buy it.
There's actually... Oh, sorry, go on.
Just publish a book and just have your author's name below it.
Yes.
It's a little dishonest. I don't recommend it. But
talking of dishonest tactics and advertising,
I don't know that there's anything stopping someone from. I think within film there are limitations to like what screen name you can have. Like there's not supposed to be any overlap in Hollywood. But as far as like authors go, or putting some type of company name, like as long as you're in a different industry, then talking trademarks go. Yeah, talking of names and talking of advertising, this is very clever but incredibly deceptive. And considering I'm a vegetarian, I really don't appreciate it, but it is very, very clever. A fast food restaurant, I won't give the name, they realized that their audience likes 100% beef. So what they did is they slapped everywhere that they're selling 100% beef in their burgers. People ate it and they're happy. It turns out they created a company called 100% Beef. And that's what they're referring to. The company itself does not use 100% beef. This is long over. This has been completely obliterated. But that's an example where legally you're fine and is incredibly effective. But morally, I mean, you're morally bankrupt if you're into that kind of level of advertising. But it is effective. Yeah, it is very dishonest. But a lot of these tactics that, and I'm sure we're about to dive into a bunch of different techniques that people use. It really is, it's an area, a realm of social engineering where you're trying to get people to take money out of their wallet and put it into yours. And there's all kinds of different moral gradients as to like what is and isn't dishonest. But ultimately it's like you're trying to emotionally appeal to them to sell a product, to make them feel like they want to buy it. And, there's ways to do that morally and ethically that are still influencing and still, influencing the way that they think and feel. And then there's other ways that can get a little sketch, like putting 100% beef on your burgers.
It's genius in the worst way.
See, that strikes me as not just emotional manipulation. It just strikes me as outright deception.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where's the line? Because that's one of the big questions with advertising. It's all deception. Yeah. If it's defined as you're deceiving someone because you're using tactics to manipulate their emotions, this is the game of advertising. And
I think the difference is: are you claiming, or does it seem obvious that you're claiming to sell something that is not what you're selling?
Of course, and they did get sued successfully because of that. Good. So it's more than a fair point that you're saying there. It's just interesting to see where that grey level is.
Yeah.
It is tough. So one of the kind of like big techniques that I want to start talking, start this conversation talking about is the idea of emotional conditioning, where advertisers will kind of condition you to feel a certain thing when you see their product. So obviously big ones have done this, like Coca-Cola. So now whenever you pretty much see the color red or you see like a Coca-Cola somewhere, you feel like kind of like you feel thirsty, you want to drink, but you also kind of feel almost like the happiness that the Coca-Cola ads have,
Yeah.
Like childhood nostalgia, birthday parties. And
exactly, yeah. So this goes like all the way back to Pavlov. And, you know, like Pavlov's dog, right? Where he conditioned the dog to, you know, start, how do you pronounce it? Salivating, yeah. Whenever he rang a bell, right? You can do the same with advertising. So you take a unconditioned stimuli, which is your product, and you pair it with a conditioned stimuli, which is something they already, or the consumer already has an emotional connection with. So this might be a color, it might be a song, it might be a celebrity, but you pair them together so often that soon the consumer starts associating your product with that feeling. So Haagen-Dazs did this really, really well with their adverts, because they do kind of like very sort of like sexy, sensual adverts. And they did some not too long, well, maybe a little while ago now, with Bradley Cooper. And, you know, objectively, he's a very attractive man, right? And they had this kind of like sexy music playing in the background. And they had like all these slow-mo shots of him and like close-ups of his eyes and his lips. And then they had this woman like crawling up across his body. And they were like very kind of like sensual shots. And then at the end, she stole the ice cream from him and like ran away with it. But the idea was they were taking this music, this actor, these like kind of romantic shots and things like that. And, you know, they were, because their target market is essentially women, and they were making these women feel arousal. They were making them feel like, yeah, I want to indulge a little bit. And then soon, when women would see, you know, the ice cream tubs, they'd be like, ooh, I feel a little bit, you know, in the mood for a little bit of indulgence. I'll just buy this ice cream so I can indulge and feel happy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I don't have to steal it from Bradley Cooper.
Exactly. You can buy your own.
It turns out the advert went wrong. There was just a load of fat women stealing ice cream from his house. There's been a massive law case. No. Yeah.
No, but it was actually a very, very like successful set of adverts.
Definitely.
And, you know, sales went up, and people definitely started associating Haagen-Dazs ice cream with something a little bit special, you know.
Mm.
So can you think of like any other examples of where that's happened, where you've seen kind of like emotional conditioning in advertising or marketing?
The most blatant one that I can think of are the Super Bowl commercials in the US.
Yeah.
Where, you know, if you're in the middle of watching the Super Bowl and all of a sudden a Doritos commercial comes on, you're not going to run out to the store and leave the football game and everything and leave your friends to go make a trip to the store to go pick up Doritos. Like, if you think about it in that moment, it seems like, well, why would they target that? Like, they're not going to go buy Doritos right now. But they're playing such a long game where if every single time that you watch the Super Bowl, you see Coca-Cola and Doritos, Coca-Cola and Doritos, Bud Light, you know, you see all of these associations with the Super Bowl, then all of a sudden it's like the next time the Super Bowl comes around, it's like, well, we got to pick up some Coke, Doritos, and Bud Light. And it starts just becoming this natural thing where it's like these things that they have so heavily associated with the Super Bowl, and they always show people watching the Super Bowl eating these things. You know, you get this kind of nostalgia. You get this feeling of like, well, that's what you're supposed to do with it. And I mean, I despise Bud Light, not from just from a taste standpoint. But I think it's disgusting and it's fake beer. That's personal opinion. I'm sure that some of our listeners love it. That's fine. But
did I mention this episode is sponsored by Bud Light?
Now that's the where I was going to go. Sponsorship is a great example where...
No, legal disclaimer, Bud Light is not associated with the Here and How in any way, shape, or form. Don't sue us.
Please. No, for what it's worth, I quite like Bud Light. So there we go, we're even now. I don't really, I'm just saying it to cover our asses. No, I do. I'm joking. So sponsorship is a great example of that. You see it with YouTubers. You see that the sponsorships, half of it is because they're people trying to, you know, make a living, but a big part of it is also those brands want to associate with those people, those ideas that they're expressing, the content that they create. There's fantastic examples. And that's, of course, true of series and films in general as well. You get it in films. If you look at the new Avengers, I didn't look for the product placements, but there's going to be a hell of a lot. Someone will, when you see a film and someone picks up a Nokia rather than a Motorola or whatever it might be, that isn't arbitrary. That's been paid for. And it's because you associate those products with those people. It's a celebrity endorsement. It's more of an insidious, although that's probably the wrong word. It's more of an implicit type of advertisement. And the same is true of sponsorships in general. So Game of Thrones comes on, fantastic show, and it's sponsored by, again, Doritos or whatever it might be. I have no idea who sponsors them. But the point being is that, I'm going to see my favorite show. Yes, I also want Doritos. We don't think like that, but subconsciously we kind of do. Yeah. And it is effective. So yeah, sponsorship I'd say is a good example for what you're looking for.
I always remember when I was a kid, I'd always watch Coronation Street with my parents, and which is a soap, if you don't know Thomas. And so it was like a thing we did as a family. We'd get together and we'd watch Coronation Street. And Crunchy sponsored them for a really long time. And so ever since then, even now when I have Crunchies, they're kind of like a comfort food for me. They're something that's like, when I feel like I need a hug, I'll go buy a Crunchie because it's like a hug in a chocolate bar,
That does make sense. You have that association, Bill. And it's amazing because they tapped into, not only is Coronation Street a mental representation of life, no offense to Coronation Street viewers and soaps in general, but it's family time. And if they can get their product associated with family time and somebody's alone or even just whatever, it doesn't matter, that does have a connection. It works. So that's cool.
Unless you have like an abusive family and every time you have a Crunchie, it's like
someone gets a Crunchie out, you drop the Crunchie, go away.
Well, that actually leads on to my second point a little bit, kind of. Not really. But advertisers and marketers who use fear, doubt, and uncertainty to try and sell you their product. So they make you feel like if you don't have their product, you feel like you're missing out on something. You feel like you're not getting something. So this could be, if you don't get these new windows, you'll be cold at winter. Or it could be if you don't have these new shoes, you're not going to fit in at school, But can you...
Or alarm systems.
Yeah?
Alarm systems where it's like, they'll show some horrible catastrophe scenario where you come home and all your windows are, knocked in and you feel violated and you don't even know if the thief is still in the house and you feel unsafe for weeks. And so they'll kind of paint these scenarios and it's like, or you could get the such and such quick response alarm system that, will keep your home safe and alert the cops if anything happens. I think of that. I think insurance oftentimes will sell based off of fear and paranoia. There's all kinds of fears. There's, like you said, the fear of feeling left out or feeling like the odd one out. Like everyone else has this, but you don't. You should come buy our fidget spinners because you're so 2016.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, this isn't just selling you something that you need. This is creating a want and a need in the consumer. And so this is my question. Like, is this manipulative to kind of make the consumer fear something that they had no fear of before?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But is it wrong? It's a different question.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest breakthroughs in advertising when they learn not to look for demands and then supply. It's to create the demand and then have the supply.
The entire hygiene industry did that.
I would say the first foundational ideology to do it is religion. They create a disease and then sell you the cure. They say, oh, look, you're damned forever unless you give 10% to the church and you basically metaphorically suck off Jesus. That's just how that works. It's you create the demand and then sell it. And there's so many examples of that in advertising.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say in the world of hygiene, there was a phase in like the 1900s where they started selling all kinds of hygiene products that had never before existed, and new kinds of soaps and shampoos and body lotions and conditioners and all this stuff. And they would basically show it as if they could make you feel like if you don't use this, you're dirty, then nobody wanted to be, associated as like the disgusting, like if they can elicit a disgust response from this is what you're like if you don't have these specific hygiene products, then all of a sudden people like it became a multi-billion-dollar industry overnight.
Yeah, I remember
because
links.
Instantly people started seeing like if you don't use these products, you're absolutely disgusting. And a lot of times like they'll do that with things like shaving body hair and stuff, shaving, you know, legs or armpits or things like that, like pubic hair. It's not necessarily that, you know, oh, if you do or don't have armpit hair, you're unhygienic and unclean. But it's kind of seen as this thing where like, oh, a girl has armpit hair, like that's just gross. You know, we have this disgust response it's there. And it's been conditioned by showing, you know, this is what a sexy, clean woman looks like, and this is what a disgusting, like, hairy Bigfoot lady looks like. And they'll paint these pictures to try to elicit a disgust response, create a problem, and then sell you the razor or the product or whatever else.
Yeah. Deodorant companies do it heavily to teens, or they did when I was younger, and it's basically...
I remember all the Lynx adverts,
Yeah, Lynx was one of the big corporates here, and...
That's Axe in America, is it?
Yeah, Axe in America and Europe, but Lynx in the UK.
Axe
Not entirely
spray.
sure why. Yeah. But them and among others, they were much more opaque about it as well. They would have girls going towards lots of boys, you know, to chat them up, whatever, because that happens, and there'll be one guy that wasn't getting chatted up, and then all of a sudden he sprays himself with Lynx or with deodorant, and then he does get attention, and that's creating a demand when there wasn't one, because truth be told, that's generally not a problem. At least, unless it's a terrible example. Yeah, if it's a terrible
body odor.
but then you've also got the supply and demand, or demand and supply system going with females as well, which are young. It would be without the presence of them saying you should care about what a man smells like, which is something that's pressed across, or you should care about these kind of elements or these factors. They don't. And we know that because you can look at other cultures that haven't had that cultural impression, and it's just not a thing.
Yeah. Well, but it's weird because once you live in a culture and a society that values certain aspects of hygiene, then when you live somewhere else where it's not valued, it stands out like a sore thumb to you. Like you can't help but notice and see it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I've lived all over, and I've lived in places where like people would ride buses and like literally deodorant was not an issue or was not a thing to them. And, you know, sometimes getting on the buses, it's like, oh my God, like the whole thing is like, it's like riding through, you know, inside of a sauna because they'd have the windows up in the summertime or something, and everyone is sweating. Yeah. And it smells awful, but it's like if that's not a part of your culture or that's not a norm or something, then a lot of times people don't give it a second thought. It's like, oh, that's just what buses smell like.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
Well, this kind of links onto another idea as well, which is like creating the idea of like scarcity of your product. So what you were saying before about like sponsorships on YouTube, so many of them do this with the whole like, oh, the first 1,000 people to sign up will get, you know, and so by making it seem like your product is rare or that only certain people get it or only special people get it, it plays on that fear as well. That, you know, the fear of missing out because you want to be one of the special people. You want to be one of the people to get it. So I was wondering, like, do you guys have any other examples of that? Or
I've got a great example with PlayStation, actually. It was genius. I think it might have been PlayStation 2, but it was sold at Toys R Us, among other places, but Toys R Us was the place you went to get it. Not entirely sure if Toys R Us is a company anymore, but it's basically a toy shop.
I think they've literally just shut down.
Oh,
they are in the States still.
They are in the States. Cool. I think in the UK they have unfortunately shut down.
Yeah.
But what happened was, and they split tested this with other areas as well. To some areas, they use the radio, they use the local advertising to say that there is a lack of supply. So there's only so many that are going to be stocked because they've woefully underestimated how many they needed to create. And in other areas, they didn't have that. They just said new console, and they just sparked it up by saying, look, these games here and there. The difference, just because of that element of scarcity of purchases in the first week, was stupendous. And it's because people thought, if I don't get it now, I might not get it for a month or two, because they might not be able to, you know, create it in the amounts that they need to catch up with the demand that they didn't realize they had, when really that wasn't the problem. So they created a demand by using scarcity. And is that manipulation? Yes. Is it genius? Yes, it is. It's great.
That happened with the Nintendo Wii when they first released it. They do this with iPhones as well, where they'll intentionally release fewer than they could manufacture in order to create this artificial scarcity for the first month or two.
Yeah.
And when they do that, not only do they have lines around the block at stores of people waiting to get theirs, but then there'll be people that turn around and sell them online for like twice the price.
Yeah.
And, you know, you might think, oh, well, why does we do that? Like, they could just make more, and then all of these, you know, they're not having these resales and stuff, you know, where other people are making more money off of them. But it's like, no, they're actually filling people's households with these items that are seen as this luxury thing of like, oh my God, like I actually got my hands on one. And suddenly everybody wants one. It's like, then you know, because they're selling 10 times as fast as without scarcity, then everyone else is like, you know, there's suddenly more in people's houses than there would otherwise be. And then you go to your friend's house and you're more likely to see one and you're more likely to want it because they have it.
Yeah.
You know,
it's quite strange, but the delicacy of when something is released, a product of that kind of level, the delicacy of the people in charge of advertising specifically, and exactly what tactics they use, which strategy they exhibit, that is, to the largest extent, going to tell you whether or not the product's going to succeed. And it's amazing when you realize just how much is in that part. It's ridiculous.
Well, there was some drama on YouTube, I think like sometime last year or like maybe towards the end of last year. And have you guys heard of John Cookian? He's like, I didn't really know who he was until I saw all this drama, but I think he's either like some kind of like gossip type channel or something to do with makeup and stuff like that. But he tried releasing this like makeup line of his own, and apparently a lot of people were mad because it was basically like really cheap, crappy quality stuff that he'd just like put his own branding on and like tried to sell it at like a pretty increased price. But the main reason there was drama was because on the day that he launched it, he kept like tweeting out and Snapchatting and stuff and be like, oh my God, guys, you've like totally overloaded my servers because like, you know, you all want my stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then someone went on his website and looked at it and the servers weren't like overloaded or whatever. Like his website wasn't that busy. He just put a little like web page together saying like, oh, can't reach the site right now. And someone went on and saw that he'd faked it. And so no one was actually buying his stuff, but because he pretended that, you know, everyone wanted it, suddenly people started buying it. But then he was caught out and there was all this drama. And so, yeah, that's how I saw and heard about it. So on the one hand, like on the one hand, he was creating that scarcity and that is quite smart and people did end up buying his stuff. But on the other hand, he didn't do it well and he got caught out. So,
but this is the thing, right? So to a lot of advertisers, for a lot of companies, a lot of products, they just want to sell their item and they can do it by any means necessary because there isn't a personal relationship. But if he's a YouTuber and he has a personal relationship with people, what happens then is that you are sacrificing your
trust with your audience,
your charisma with your audience, your trust, so that you can make a few more, and credibility, of course, that's the key word, so that you can make more money. What he did there, in my opinion, was a huge mistake because you do not want to put the trust of the people that are paying attention to you. You don't want to sell that for money. That's just not smart. Even from a business point of view, even if you just look at it from that point of view, it's still not smart, let alone just from a moral and principle.
You can always get more money, you can lose more money, you can get more money, but you can never get your credibility back.
Yeah.
It takes infinitely more time to gain credibility than it does to lose it.
It does, yeah.
And, you know, building trustworthiness is one of the most important things with any business, especially if you have a face on the business.
Yeah. Then talking of like faces on the business, you then have like an interesting gray area. So a company might contact you and say, hey, if for every person you send over to use our services, we will give you an affiliate commission, which means they give you 10% of whatever they purchase. I've seen even brands will definitely go with the option I'm about to use, but I've seen most YouTubers and most personalities will just give you the link and say, if you want to help out, you can do it this way. Or some of them will just say, this is a good service, check it out, that's okay. But there's not being forthcoming with, I benefit from this because I get 10%. But I have seen quite a few just opaquely, obviously, explicitly state, hey, I get 10% of whatever you purchase over there. I just get it as a income. So you'll also be helping me out, and it is also a good service. And also check this on Trustpilot and on this and this, so you can actually see that it's not. I've got a foot in the door here, so my opinion can't be taken completely objectively. Here's resources where you can, and I can't help but feel that they probably do better. But knowing advertising, that's probably not the case.
I'm always like really honest when I use affiliate links for stuff, because I have like an Amazon Associates account, which means that if I like recommend books or anything like that, I'll pop some links in the description because often people want to buy them. And I say like, this is an Associates link, so if you click or buy anything through this, I get a little bit of the money, but don't feel you have to use it. Like, I'm recommending these regardless.
You are legally required, if you use an affiliate link, you are legally required to disclose that. Now, the extent to which
US,
you do,
or?
I think Europe has those requirements too, but I know that the US does.
It wouldn't surprise me.
We're leaving Europe, so that's good.
But there's, you could just, like, if I do an affiliate link, I can put just in the description little parentheses that say this is an affiliate link or something. And if it's something really simple or stupid that I'm probably not going to make more than a few cents off of, but it's just an interesting book that I mention and I'm throwing a link down there, I might use like an Amazon affiliate link and just say in parentheses like affiliate link. And that's not a big deal. But if you're selling something that's like a product or something that's more of like a high-end thing, and you're given, talking about it in your video and stuff and trying to get people to sell it and really pushing it hard, then I think something like that, like with any item, you shouldn't try to sell something that you wouldn't use yourself, that you wouldn't actually recommend to like friends and family, like that you can't stand behind. And
well, that's the thing. I've had quite a few sponsorship offers through YouTube, and I've turned down all the ones I've had so far because they're not products that I use or like or believe in. So I'm like, I'm not going to promote a product that I don't like.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
One thing though, as far as the scarcity goes, this is a tactic that I know a lot of people who sell information products online will do. Like if they have a course or something, or if they have a seminar, an online seminar or something to sign up for, a lot of times what there's websites you can get, and there's entire themes, WordPress themes, that'll create landing pages that create a sense of scarcity. And what they'll do is they'll say, this is a limited time offer. And they'll say, like, from the time that your web browser loads the page, it'll put a cookie on your machine that basically starts a countdown timer. And it says, you have to buy it within the next 24 hours or the next 2 hours or the next 15 minutes or something. They'll have like a little video that's like 5 minutes long, and then it's like you have 10 extra minutes to like, oh man, I got to click that link and put in my credit card info. And you feel this sense of urgency. And urgency is huge, because then it's like you don't want them to stop and, really think through like, well, long term, I'm going to spend $200 on this course and my paycheck doesn't come in until next week, so maybe I'll wait. Or, it's $200 and maybe it'll kind of, I'll get like a net positive of $250 by applying the things I learned from this course. You don't want them to kind of stop and calculate out, like, is it really worth the extra time? Like, you're just trying to sell a product. And so when you put, on these websites, you'll put these little countdown timers that, trigger this quick response. Like, if you don't do it now, you'll miss this opportunity. Then your sales go through the roof. And it's not really it's like, on the one hand, you're not telling, like, whether you sell it now or a week from now, as a salesperson, you don't give a crap about. You're just trying to sell the product. It's not like an information product online is just going to disappear from the internet in an hour. But by giving people a short window of time to act on it, then you're giving them a sense of urgency that does drive up sales. Now, one way around that a lot of times is people will clear their cookies and reload the page, and the timer restarts back up at the original number.
Yeah.
So it's not really something that they have too much control over necessarily, but
Well, I think the UK equivalent are sofa sales. Like, the DFS sale is always ending soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
This weekend only.
Yeah. And it's like, it's always on. Always.
Yeah.
Which actually, speaking of sales and pricing, kind of leads me on to my next little topic, which is price anchoring and the decoy effect. And price anchoring basically comes down to the fact that all pricing is relative. The value we place on stuff is completely relative. So if you don't know much about the other products available in a market space, then you can't really tell how good a value something is. Like, if you take someone like me, I know nothing about cars, right? So if I went out to buy a car tomorrow and this guy turned around to me and said, oh, this car is £30,000, I would have no idea if that was cheap or expensive. Like, literally none, because I have nothing to compare it to. Whereas if someone comes up to me, shows me a camera lens and says, oh, this is, £1,500, I'll know based on, what the lens is like, if that's a good deal or not.
Yeah.
Because I have other things to compare it to. So by placing similar products with different prices, like near your product, people have something to compare it to and are more likely to, buy the product you want to sell. So it's like, if you have a £200 watch that you're trying to sell because you have a lot of them, you could place it next to a £2,000 watch and be like, oh, well, it's this much cheaper than this. And then more people will be likely to buy it because they think they're getting a good deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what price anchoring is. And the decoy effect is kind of similar because that's where you have three choices and you're trying to push people towards one in particular. So you purposefully imbalance one of the options. So you guys know I can't say his name. Was it Dan Ariely? Dan
Ariely?
Yeah, him.
Predictably Irrational, the author?
Yes.
Yeah.
He wrote about a study with, I think it was, what was the magazine now? Is it The Economist, I think?
Yeah.
The Economist. He wrote about the study in Predictably Irrational, I think, where they offered a web-only version for $59, a print-only version for $125, and a print-on-web version for $125 as well. And out of the people who chose it, 16% of people went for web-only, and 84% of people went for the print-on-web version. Because the print-only one at $125 seemed like terrible value when you could get print and web for the same price.
Yeah.
So they were trying to push people towards the more expensive one by having that imbalance in there.
It's very clever.
Yeah, so I thought I'd just kind of open up the floor to talking about price anchoring and the decoy effect with you guys. Do you have any other examples or?
I've got two good examples. Let's just say again, you pay Alibaba or I don't know, just some kind of outlet to print t-shirts and you put your logo on it. There's a lot of money to be made by paying companies, whatever it might be, to put your items near the expensive items. You can just by doing that, you can increase your value and how much you can sell it for. It pays for itself by paying them to do that because of the association. Oh, look, all the expensive brands are there, and yet that one's quite cheap and it's over there. Never heard of that. I might buy it. It's obviously good. It's over there with those rather than in that corner with them. That works. That's really, really effective. But my favorite example was airlines. There was first class and second class. That's all there was. And they could not sell first class. It just would not sell because people did not feel like paying a tremendous amount more for a bit more leg room, etc. So what they did is they created third class. And all of a sudden, when you looked at it, third class was X amount. Second class was a little bit more expensive than third class, but actually it was just the same as first class. And then new first class was really, really expensive. And people looked at it and they don't know what to judge it on. They don't do this often. And they go, well, I either pay for third class for, let's just say 100% of whatever, or 110% and I can get second class, or 300% for first. And they would go, oh, screw it. I'll pay another 10% so I can get the mid range. And it worked. They just sold all day long.
Well, you'll see this a lot on websites where they'll put up three different options, and they might have one that's in the middle that would, it's that like that first class and third class example. It might be more expensive than the first option, but by having one on the far end that's even just outrageously expensive that nobody's even going to buy, suddenly it kind of puts it in perspective, and the middle price doesn't seem that high. It doesn't seem that bad. And you can highlight it. You can, have it stick out a little bit and, be more visible and say this is kind of another aspect that I'm not sure if you were going to touch on, but basically this popularity bias that we have, you'll say most popular or, 89% of people that visited our store bought this one. And you don't even have to say why. You don't have to say because it's the best one or it's the most, logical one or it's the best bang for your buck or whatever. You can just say like 89% of people bought it. It's like, oh, well, there must have been a reason that all of those other people bought this one. And so people are more likely to kind of go with the flow. And it's like, well, it's not the top 1% that's buying that. It's 89% of other people. Well, I'm like 89% of other people. So I'm going to buy that one too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It also that kind of taps into ratings. So, for example, Amazon's ratings, you can't really break. Maybe you can, I don't know, but you can't really break it. It's people will buy the product and then they can review. And you can see that the review is a verified purchase. So if you go on Amazon and you find a product and it's a good price and you look at the reviews and there's like 500 reviews and it's 4.5 star, you can be very, very sure that you're going to get a good product with decent services. However, that might not be the case on other websites because their rating systems might not work that way. It may be if you pay the company, they will put it up to 4 stars. And this happens all the damn time. And when that does happen, it means that that company is going to make a hell of a lot more sales with whatever product they're selling if they pay the middleman to give them a fake rating. There's entire industries that are built on this. I know so because I've worked in advertising and I've seen it happen. And it's amazing how effective that tactic on its own can be.
Well, until they get called out, and then it's like your credibility, you can only lose it once. And once it's gone, it
depends on the service, right? So if it's a service that needs to get people through the doors, it needs to make sales so that its stock market can look great or whatever its goal might be, then it doesn't matter about their reputation because they can spend their money on making it so that their reputation stays good in certain areas, and that's all they need.
If it's a
they
company,
only need
if it's an online business and all of the customers that shop there, they keep getting products that are absolute garbage that have 5-star ratings and 100 reviews, then you're going to stop shopping there. You're going to stop buying there. You're going to feel kind of cheated. And if then it comes to light, if some big, journal article comes out that exposes your tactics and what you're doing is dishonest, people are going to leave your store in droves. And then even if you stop using those tactics, you're going to be remembered as that dishonest site.
So stores can't really do it for exactly the reasons you've just said. But if you type in something that you want, new camera, you'll get a top 10 website. The top 10 website is doing exactly what I've just said. They are all bought for and they are all affiliate links. And when it goes through, even if they get caught, even if people go, this is a terrible site, they're still paying more on Google Ads to be the first thing that comes up. And all they have to do is bring that website down, create a new one, give it a new skin, and they go again. And that works. It's really effective. The only way around that is actually to educate people on what's going on there and how to get around it. Otherwise...
I feel like a similar thing. Sorry, I feel like a similar thing would be YouTubers paying for views and like buying views. You know what I mean? They like buy those initial views, so they get a big bump, and then the algorithm is like, oh, well, this has a lot of views, so we'll show it to more people. Or people say like, oh, this is a video with a lot of views, people must like it, so I'll go watch it. But if you get caught out, your reputation's gone.
I will say though, sooner or later, that always backfires. And an example that I'll give of this is like, let's say that you type in Google top 10 cameras. 5 or 6 years ago, you get a bunch of random crazy blogs of someone who's just putting up affiliate marketing links, creating a list and blasting it out there. That stuff does not rank as high in Google as it used to. No. Nowadays, the top results, you're going to get stuff from like TechCrunch and, Gizmodo and all these technology sites. You're going to get articles from places that review stuff constantly. You're going to get YouTubers that have millions of subscribers that just review stuff for a living. And the way that they've gotten so big in order to rank, to be linked to by so many other sites and to rank so high in Google and to outrank these crappy sites is because of credibility, because they've released hundreds and thousands of product reviews where they've actually taken the product and reviewed it and actually compared products side by side and, shown something of value. So, I mean, it kind of comes back to like being honest is always going to be in the long run. Yeah, you might make a quick buck by just, being manipulative and stuff. And there's certain aspects of sales that, no matter what, sales is a manipulative field. It's a manipulative industry. You're trying to emotionally capitalize on or capitalize financially on people's emotions. But in the long term, by being trustworthy and by being honest, like you're going to do better long term almost every single time.
You see, I really don't agree. It depends on what's being sold and how it's being sold. So if you look at a business owner, to put it clearly out there, in the vast majority of cases that when it comes to somebody being behind the screen, so a YouTuber, for example, it's a bad idea. And when you're knowing how the algorithm works and you pay for views and you pay for clicks and you pay for comments or whatever it might be, YouTube knows what's happening, and their goal is to be able to sell a good service. And that's not a good service if people are getting to the top via exploitation of that kind of level. And so they will basically make it so the algorithm notices activity of that level and just completely boots you. And that's because their goal isn't in alignment with the goal of the person who's trying to exploit the platform. And that's great. But when it comes to businesses, a lot of businesses, their goal is to make money. It's not to have a reputable brand in many cases. It's just to make money. So they can create a brand and sell a product and pay so that they come up on Google, or exploit the algorithm, knowing how it works, paying bloggers to make to give them backlinks, as they call it in the industry, so that they keep ranking higher, so that these websites can get to the top where it's a top 10. They don't care if the reputation of the website crashes or anything like that, because it's not like eBay or Amazon. It's just a top 10 website. Then they are making the sales with affiliate commission. They normally own the top brands, and they make all the money that they can ever dream of because of these tactics, because of these exploitations, because of this manipulation. And if anything goes completely tits up, they can sell their own company, considering they're normally the number one on there, or they can sell the website, or they can just drop it. It doesn't matter, because they can just start anew with a new brand, because it's not a store. It doesn't work with stores either, which is worth pointing out, which is perhaps the point you were making there, Thomas.
Well, what I was saying is that, there are going to be people on the bottom who are, they're bottom feeders. They're scraping for traffic, and they're buying backlinks and stuff, but it really does not work as well as it used to. Like I know people who, they used to go through and they just buy a bunch of backlinks and stuff to rank higher. And nowadays, like, Google's algorithms are getting really smart. They can tell when you have a bunch of crappy backlinks pointing to your website. They can tell when all of a sudden there's a spike in 100 new backlinks without social signals. Like, if you have a website that's not being shared all throughout social media, and all of a sudden it appears on 100 websites out of the blue, that's going to hurt your website, not help it.
Yeah, so they notice that there's exploitation, and they develop their algorithm to prevent it. So and when someone goes through to a website, if they don't stay there, then that's what they're using now.
If you build a reputation as having crappy products, then, you might turn around and sell the business for whatever it's worth. But if you build a business even longer term, and you spend 10 years, 20 years really building a reputation and being the go-to site that gets, millions of hits and traffic, and people trust and rely on, your potential growth is not, I got to start over from square one because people found me out already. And you're constantly, making maybe a few thousand or tens of thousands or something. You suddenly have a multi-million-dollar business. I think that the potential scale, as far as being credible goes, is significantly higher. Yeah, you're gonna have the Bernie Madoffs of the world. You're gonna have the Ponzi schemes and the pyramid marketing, and or pyramid schemes and stuff like that. But most of those businesses, like, they don't perform as well, and the ones that do eventually get caught.
Yes. So let's just say they get caught. What happens then?
Well, if they've done illegal stuff, then usually they go to jail for tax fraud.
No, it's legal. It's legal. It's just been incredibly manipulative.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends. If it's just they're exposed, then usually their market share plummets, their stocks plummet.
But it's not. But these middlemen, these middle websites, there is no stocks in that situation. They're not losing anything. They just need to drop the website. They've made all of that money through affiliate links, etc. All they have to do is establish a new website, or a new form, or a new avenue where they can do the same. So for the people that have products themselves, I completely agree with you. It's the middlemen and the tactics that they use from advertising and manipulation and marketing. They don't have the consequences that a brand or a product does, because they can drop out at any moment. They can go, right, we're losing now, we drop out, and they take all of the gravy that they've made during it.
It is far less lucrative to be a middleman like that.
No,
in the long term.
No,
in the long term, like, your potential is so much higher, not being shady. I just personally, just from my personal experience, I wouldn't agree. Like, if I was morally bankrupt, I think I could make a tremendous amount of money. I know 20 people, self-made millionaires, and I know them personally, and they've made it via exactly the methods I've been talking about. So, and I know tons and tons of people that are trying very hard to actually give a service or to help people, and they're poor. So, like, when I was in Chiang Mai, I met a lot of people who were trying all kinds of tactics like this, trying to create review sites and set up backlinks. And, like, some of them were doing okay for themselves, but the vast majority of them were putting in a ridiculous amount of work, trying literally everything that they possibly could. And some were successful, most weren't. Most were not doing well. And the ones that were the most successful that I saw, that were starting up, businesses making 6, 7, 8 figures, were ones that were building credibility and a reputation, and then they could recommend their own products, and they could have, books and stuff. Because, like, it's hard as an affiliate marketer. You need to have some type of reputation in order to have affiliate links, and a bunch of, like, little sock websites that you're just creating out of the blue, unless you have a lot of money to start with, to
that's
pay people to, if you can just pay tons of, like, cheap labor to, like, set up websites and to just do this for you, you could hit it really big, but I mean, there's a lot that you can do. If you have money to invest in something that's legitimate, your return on investment, I think, could be significantly higher. Also,
investment in illegitimate causes as well works. I think there's a lot of confusion here between people that are selling products, and they need to, their reputation matters. They don't get to start again. They need to make sure the product is good and that it's sold according to what it can actually do. There's no doubt there. Same is true with services. But if you're a middleman and you're just trying to make sales, there is definitely a case to be made that if you use these manipulative tactics and you do it effectively, especially if you have a budget to do it, you make a tremendous amount of money and then you pull out. Whereas I'm not saying, for example, Amazon or eBay or shops, for example, that they are middlemen of those kinds. They're not, because the reviews are legitimate and it's a legitimate business. But people which make websites of top 10x, I guarantee you that those tactics take place. I've seen them. I've worked with people that use them, and they tend to have so much more success when they employ them to their maximum capacity, especially because the consequences aren't there. They can pull out. But I don't want to hijack your episode too much with.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, if we bring this back to the consumer, then what can consumers do to, make sure they're looking at, like, legit reviews and buying the right product, not just what they're being manipulated into buying? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to, like, we do this on our own anyways. Like, you search out credible sources. And one example I would give is, if you go to websites that have courses, oftentimes there'll be, like, self-help courses, like how you can become the best at whatever topic, insert thing here. And if the person who's teaching the course really wants to sell the course, then they have to show that they have super credibility, that they have worked in the industry, that they have experience in the field, that they have some type of, credentials to show for what they're doing, and then demonstrate that it has worked and that it works. And if they don't, if you create, like, let's say that I go on Udemy or something and I set up a course talking about video editing, and I've never touched a video editor in my life, you might have a bunch of people, if I have, like, a great description or something and I start, selling it as this amazing course, and I might even show all these tactics that are they seem surface level. With marketing especially, it's easy to do this. You can be like, this will get you so many sales, you just have to do it like this, because you don't necessarily have to show the end result.
Yeah.
Whereas if people start using these tactics and these techniques and they're getting nothing and it's not working for them, and then there's experts that come along that actually know their shit, that then take your course and they realize that you're teaching stuff that doesn't work because they have experience in the industry, then you're going to get your course is going to sink to the bottom because it has such horrible reviews. You could pay some people to put reviews on it and drive it up, and then it's going to get more traffic, and then it's going to get more bad reviews. But like, I think long term people start to realize that, like, you know, if they're going to buy a product, they want to buy it from someone that's credible, that's reputable, and so they seek out industry gurus who they know have actually done it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I was just thinking, what is like an easy kind of saying or something to be able to figure out things, and that is basically follow the money, because they're businesses at the end of the day. Ask what their motive is. So if it's somebody that sells the product, it is their product, then you know they do actually want their product to be good in most cases. If it is a shop, then they too want the product to be good, and they want to give you very good services because they want you to use the shop again. Whereas if it's a website that's unknown, then perhaps there is a deeper motive at play. And if it's an advert, so you got to it by clicking on an advert, not by clicking on to, not by a recommendation by someone that you also have trust for, then you can probably bet that there's something else going on there. And with that motive in mind, you're going to have to look up through an external source whether or not that product or that service is good. And one way you can use, one website that you can use is Trustpilot. Trustpilot is just people that put reviews of products, and it's completely external. And brands can't do anything. In the vast majority of cases, they can't do anything about what people say. So if you want to know if a product or a service is good, then just look at Trustpilot, and it will tell you with reviews. That's a good way of doing it.
Another great tool is the Better Business Bureau.
Okay, cool.
Where if you set up a business and you register it and stuff, and you are selling goods and services to consumers, and they have a complaint about your business, then they can go in and file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau. And if you go on there and you search and someone has a horrible rating and they haven't responded to any of the complaints, they haven't dealt with any of the consumers' problems, then they're going to maintain this horrible rating, and everyone that comes along and searches it will realize that they're a bad business to do business with, and that they're not trustworthy, that they're not reliable, and that if you buy a product from them and it turns out to be broken or something, you're probably not going to get your money back.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like a AAA rated, credible business, then it's a different story.
Yeah, forums are another good idea as well. You have to be careful because you don't know who's actually behind the posts that are being put. But forums can be a very good way of doing it. So basically, when you make any kind of high investment purchase, such as insurance or whatever it might be, what we tend to do is look at how can we get the logical, objective components here in order to make the most rational decision. And when it comes to a service of some sort or a purchase online, if it's also high investment, then we want to be able to do the same. But the difference is that when it comes to real life, as in just, everyday life, interacting with people, we can talk to people. What's your insurance? What are you running? Who did you go with before? We can make an analysis built on a lot of factors. Whereas a lot of the time when we're online, there is nothing to contrast it against. It's kind of like, has this been anchored to a price that it's not worth? Because I don't know. I have no idea what this value is. This is a new product entirely. In fact, it's only just come around. It could be website creation or whatever it might be. And the trick there is to try and find a way to be able to objectively analyze it. But the best trick, in my opinion, is look at the motive. Follow the money.
So yeah, that's pretty much like most of the stuff I want to talk about covered. This episode is getting a little bit long now. We're kind of getting on with it. So I do want to kind of wrap it up a bit. But do you guys have any other little bits that you want to touch on before we end here?
Well, I mean, what I would say a couple things. One is I'm reading a book right now called Why We Buy, and it goes into the science of marketing. He looks at it more from a standpoint of like he's worked for decades in retail stores and examined consumer behavior habits and like where do they look, where do they stop? Like if they feel like they're surrounded by too many people, they're probably not going to stop and look at an item because they feel like they're being bumped and pushed from behind. They're uncomfortable. He talks about how like when people first walk into a store, they're, rushing in from a hot parking lot, grabbing carts and stuff. And there's kind of a decompression zone where they don't see any of the signs or anything on the front as they're rushing in. They're just trying to get inside and then decompress. And so like he looks at like store layout, and it's a fascinating book as far as product placement, where to put books and stuff.
Yeah.
It's called Why We Buy. The author, let me double check.
But while you're double checking on that, that is a fascinating thing. It's used in shops as well. Have you ever wondered why when you go into your convenience store, the milk and the bread is at the back?
Yeah, that's one of the things I was just going to bring up, actually.
It's because it works. You want people to walk past chocolate bars and impulse buys and whatever it might be.
That's why, like, on the tills and stuff, you have, like, gum and chocolate bars and little things that you're like, oh, while I'm here.
All of those emotional, low investment purchases, you wouldn't have, hey, quickly pick up your insurance. That's not, it's not going to happen. But yeah.
Well, even the layout of shelves tends to, in terms of like what's on each shelf, tends to be important as well. So they put like the best selling brands, the ones that they want to push, and they put those on eye level. And then the kind of more expensive things tend to be just above those. And then the cheaper stuff, like, you know, as the smart price or whatever, that's right on the bottom shelf where you don't really see it, where you don't really look at it. They do things like that as well.
Yeah, it's so clever. It's very much, they want you to make a certain purchase, but they know if you really do care about money, for example, in that case, I just want the cheapest. I don't care because coconut milk is coconut milk, or whatever opinion you might have. Then they will put it underneath, and it's there. It's just you got to look for it.
Yeah.
There's also different shopping habits for like kids versus adults. Like if a kid can't reach it and it's way up on the top shelf, but you put the adult items on the bottom shelf, then, you know, you're doing it wrong. There's also very different shopping habits with men and women. And a lot of times, like if a man goes into a store, he wants to just kind of go in, and it's like a hunter-gatherer type, or a hunter's type mentality, where he just wants to go in, find the product, take it home, and like he's done. Whereas like women tend to spend more time with each product and actually pick it up and examine it and look at it and kind of compare it and stuff like that. A man, if he's going to do that, he wants to kind of do it from home and research it and just buy it online.
Yeah.
And I know that these are very kind of broad stereotypes, but, you know, when looking into the psychology of marketing, you know, it helps to kind of know certain commonalities and stuff between groups of people.
I always find it funny that people obviously have to face the fact that there is sincere sexual dimorphism between male and female humans, but want to think that there's nothing different psychologically. From the baseline, there's huge, but that doesn't mean that you can draw a line and say, therefore, all women have this kind of mentality, or all men. It's just, all you can say is statistically, this is more likely. But it's just, you can't. I know loads of men that will spend tremendous amount of time shopping, and I know women that are so pragmatic that just go in, boom, get what they want, and leave. And they don't. You come in, I'm like, Jesus, all right.
And part of it depends on what it's for as well.
Yeah,
you know, because I and again, like this, it's like a gradient. There are women who, you know, behave completely different in the grocery store than men. But in general, you know, certain items men are going to take longer to stare at or to look at, and certain items women are going to take longer to stare at. Now, there's going to be outliers. There's going to be people on all ends of the spectrum, and, you know, from different sexes. But, you know, I know, like, my sister, when she goes in to like buy a phone or buy an electronics product, because most of it seems like gobbledygook to her, she's not very electronically savvy. She'll just kind of go in and be like, oh, well, the store person told me this one's a good one. And I'm like, what? Like, this is your cell phone. This is something that you're going to, you know, use like and have on you pretty much all the time. And you just go in and buy the one that the clerk recommends, like without researching it and like learning all the ins and outs of like which phone is good. And, you know, to me, that's insane. But at the same time, like if I go to the store to buy, you know, a particular type of, I don't know what product I don't really care about, but
maybe a washing machine, you know, just because you might just go in and go, what's good? And the guy might tell you, you might buy it, especially if you have in your mind.
I'm not going to care as much.
Yeah.
But even certain food products, like if I go in and there's like, you know, I'm making some eggs or something, and I'm going to go and buy like a little thing of sausage to mix with the eggs. I'm not going to look at all of the dietary aspects of it.
No, although that is kind of a low investment versus the phone being a high investment, which is probably part of why you were like, or you would be like, why didn't you think this through a bit more? That was a big purchase. It's something that's going to be on you for ages, and it's expensive.
Well, all right, then how about this for an example?
If you're wearing bacon, then, you know, like you buy it and you wear it, this is what you've got for a year.
Hey, Lady Gaga's done it.
She has indeed.
I was going to say, though, like, clothes is an example. Like, there's a big difference. Like, Dan, when he buys clothes, he likes to go into the shop and try them on and take his time and, like, find the right fit and everything like that. Whereas I hate kind of clothes shops and I don't like being around people that much, and I hate trying on clothes in shops. So I'll either spend a lot of time looking online and like buy a few things and then like, you know, get them delivered, or just go into a shop, buy a few things, bring them home, try them on at home and take them back or send them back if they're not right. I'd much rather do that than go into a shop and spend time trying them on there. So I guess that's a big difference.
Yeah.
The author of the book Why We Buy Paco Underhill.
Okay, I've not heard of him.
And I wanted to. There was
reading that though. Sorry, go on.
There was one other aspect too with sales that I wanted to touch on. This happens a lot, especially with like door-to-door salesmen or like one-on-one sales, you know, techniques. Is that we like to do things for other people who've done something for us, and so like if let's say that someone has helped us in some sort of way, then like we don't like having this imbalance in like, this person helps me and I haven't helped them. And like, so we have this feeling of reciprocity, like we owe them something, even if it's something small. I
hate it when you see like salespeople, like we get quite a lot of them in the shopping center here. And sometimes I'll just be like running around trying to get some stuff. You know, like if I need like kitchen cleaner, I'll go to the Wilco in the shopping center, and right outside there's a little kiosk where they always have like, you know, like internet salesmen or people like that, or car insurance salesmen. They'll always come up to me like, oh, I love your top. Like, where'd you get that from? Or be like, oh, you look very nice today. I'm like, don't compliment me, because I'm going to feel like I have to stand here and talk to you. I'm like, I don't have time for that.
I was just going to say, like, if you go to certain shops or outside certain stores that sell chocolate, there'll be someone outside offering truffles. And it's just like, have a truffle.
Samples.
But that's because when you eat it, what's kind of happening is you go, I kind of feel like I need to respond here with reciprocity. I'll at least go in the shop. Now I'm going to feel awkward if I go past them after eating that free sweet and not making a purchase. To some people, this just isn't a thing. It doesn't really resonate. They just go, cheers, free chocolate. Tends to be men. But
that
to
happened
a lot
to
of
me
people,
and Dan once. There was this food market in Leamington, like, I think it was like the first Sunday of every month or something, and they always had really nice stuff. We went to this one store and they had these great like sauces and things like that, and there were loads of free samples, and we like, these look great, they look like really nice flavors, and me and Dan tried a few and they were all really disgusting. But by that point we'd had so many free samples, we were like, which is the least disgusting? We have to buy one.
It's so true though. Like the longer that they take helping you and the more time that they spend, you know, kind of giving you things and building a relationship, the more you feel this sense, this obligation to buy something.
It was like a £3 bottle of sauce and it's still in our cupboard.
Well, I've noticed that too with services where like if you walk into like a Best Buy in the US and one of the employees like spends a long time helping you look at laptops and then you're like, oh, I was just looking by. Best Buy doesn't even work on commission. No. They don't get any of the percentage of that sale, but you still feel bad about like, oh, I just wasted this person's time, even though they were getting paid the whole time to literally do just that.
Yeah.
But you feel this sense of like, I should buy something or else I'm kind of a dick.
That's also a large part of why a lot of people do not like interacting with people at all when they go into shops. So you know, I have a motorbike and I went into a shop recently and the service people were just wanting to come up and go, can we help you? What are you looking for? It's like, I could have just said, I'm looking for gloves that don't have leather in. But I spent 20 minutes going through them personally to try and find it, rather than have them come along, find them for me, spend that time, build that reciprocity for me to go, I don't like the aesthetics, bye. I don't want to do that. I'd prefer to actually find it myself, even though it's a lot longer time, look at it myself and go, do I want these? Yes, these are pretty good. Or no,
there's
I don't
pressure
feel bad.
Too. There's pressure too, because they're standing over you, like looking at like, are you going to buy? Well, so which one do you want? Like everyone buys. You're weird. You're not buying it even after staring at all of them. What's wrong with you?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think also too, like people get, they manage to get like a foot in the door by asking for something small first. So there was an example of a company that they, instead of going around asking if they could sell a service, like when they tried that, like nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to be a part of something or nobody wanted to commit to anything. But then when instead they went around first and they just asked everyone like, hey, can we put this sign in your front yard? It was such a low commitment request that most people were like, oh yeah, that's fine. That's, put the sign in the yard. And then after like a few weeks or a few months when they came back to get the sign, then they would say like, oh, hey, thank you so much for letting us put up this sign in your front yard. Would you like to hear more about this service? Then people were much more likely, because like in their mind, it's like, oh, well, they must be good people because I already helped them and let them have this sign. I already did this favor for them. We must have some type of friendship here. Like there's this subconscious, like they already have their foot in the door. You've done something nice for them, so you're more likely to, to hear out a second request because you have a history of listening.
So they call that the commitment and consistency heuristic. And probably my most favorite and long-lasting thing that I learned at university was this. It's about heuristics. And we talked about scarcity. That's a heuristic. We've talked about reciprocity. That's a heuristic, as is commitment and consistency. I've said it before, but it's just relevant, so it should be said again. And that is, if you try and get someone to join a charity, say for dogs, you're going to get a set amount of people that will say yes, and most people will say no. But if you have exactly the same situation, but first of all, you get people, you say, would you sign this, please? It just says that you're against abuse against dogs. That's it. There's a small commitment. There's no purchase, nothing. They will then sign it, because a lot of people go, well, yeah, I am fundamentally against that. You shouldn't be hurting dogs. Then if you ask them, then if you pitch them, the percent of people which will actually become part of that charity is astronomically higher than if you didn't have that little micro commitment at the beginning. And it's commitment and consistency heuristic. It's just, it works. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I reckon, unless there's anything else you two want to add, that is pretty much as done for this week. So I guess the only question left is, do you guys feel like you're being manipulated?
Of course.
But is that a bad thing?
It's like,
not necessarily, no.
Yeah. I mean, if it helps us get the right products, then maybe it's a good thing. Like targeted advertising. I think it can be a good thing because it shows me products that I am interested in. Like, I don't want to see adverts for cars and trees. I actually think of something else. You know what I mean? Like,
okay, Google, don't show tree advertisements to Rachel, okay?
Yeah, I hate those adverts about sand. Like, what are they doing as well? Jeez. Did you see that advert going around lately about the sky?
I thought you were serious.
Yeah. No, I don't think that there's anything wrong with marketing and with trying to have targeted advertisements that, actually are products that people need or want or could make their lives better. I think it comes down to like every interaction, every conversation to some extent is an exercise in social engineering.
Yes.
You're either pushing people further away from you or bringing people closer together. You're either making them more interested or less interested in something. And I think what it comes down to is, are you being dishonest? Are you lying? And telling them that it's something that it isn't, selling them something, that will, deliberately deceive them or hurt them or something? Or are you doing something that's in people's best interest? Is it like, this is genuinely a product I think could help you and could make your life better? And, yes, there's aspects of social engineering everywhere in sales, but I think that there are ethical frameworks that you can, operate in that need to be used that,
it's
make for a better sales world.
It's like advertising, marketing, manipulation. It happens in every endeavor of our lives. All you have to do is be interacting with someone in any way, family, friends, companies, it doesn't matter. They are taking place. The difference between advertising and marketing and general real life is knowledge. They just know what they're doing and they're paying attention to it rather than just doing it out of, whim, essentially. So even if we have a problem with it, I don't think you can do anything about it because people don't have to be honest about what they know. And if they do know it, then
and if it's 100% beef.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a grey area. Let's it's funny though, and it's genius.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's important for like consumers to be aware that these tricks are being used and happening as well, because then they can be like, oh wait, you know, this is what they're trying to do. So now I can kind of like look at this rationally and think, is this actually the best deal for me? Or am I being forced into buying something that I don't really want?
Yep.
You know?
Follow the money. What's the motive?
We'd be fools to think that everyone isn't doing this to some extent, because even the consumer protection organizations and the online reviews and all these other sites that are there to help the consumers not get scammed, even they are appealing to your emotion of, you know, oh, you know, you've been scammed and you've bought this horrible product, but come to our site and use our services in order to not, you know, fall for this stuff. You know, it's still marketing techniques, but it's honest techniques. And I think that that's the difference, is like, you know, you can empower yourself by, like, you have the entire internet at your disposal. You can search up these companies, look for reviews, look for ratings, see if they're reputable, you know, where the ratings come from, who's writing them, what are the requirements even to write a rating, and, you know, try to find the businesses that are reputable before you jump in bed with something that is potentially a massive money loss.
Yep. This episode is sponsored by
by Bernie Madoff. Putting your money to work.
Wow.
But first you have to recruit 10 people below you.
Yes.
Recruit 10 people below them.
Multi-level marketing is like a whole
just
other
because it's
conversation.
shaped like a pyramid doesn't necessarily... I'm sorry, I can't.
Have you seen the clip of the guy who went on Dragon's Den to try and get them, like, involved in a pyramid scheme?
No.
Oh, so good.
You'll have to link it in the description.
Yeah.
And the Americans
we should wrap up though. You're gonna have way too much editing.
Oh, I know. Tell me about it. Right. That is pretty much us done for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Let us know how you have been manipulated in the past by marketers, not just in general.
And if you think of a good way to market this episode, then do it for us.
Do it, yeah.
We can't pay
Because
you,
you've already listened. You've already done us a favor by listening.
That's commitment.
So there's, you know, and we've given you this service, so there's reciprocity. And
so now you
so like and share and subscribe.
Can we call this a service? Listen, you've had our disservice.
Oh no, Steve! Don't price this in the low end of the market. This is like the best podcast.
Share this with your friends, because only the first 1,000 people can hear it.
That's
and then
true.
It blows up.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we
also,
don't
you'll notice that all the good content was at the end, because we wanted to, you know, take the bread and milk's whole scenario and just go, wow, let's just put chocolate bars at the front.
There's the first decompression part where people aren't listening.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to wrap this up.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay.
This has been an absolute blast, and now we want you to join in the conversation over on the Here and How Facebook and Twitter pages, or follow us on Pinterest and Instagram if you just want some of the dankest of sciencey memes. If you like one of our particular styles, check out each of our YouTube channels: Rachel Oates, Rationality Rules by Stephen Woodford, and Holy Kool-Aid by me, Thomas Westbrook. To find all of our episodes, show notes, contact information, and more, warp on over to our home base, thehereandhow.com. If you enjoyed this episode and want us to succeed in spreading the love of science, you can help us out by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher. And to all our friends and family listening, thank you for spending this episode with us. We'll be back to explore another exciting big idea next week. Now go create something magnificent.